When you know that you are queer, but your favorite drink is beer, that's gayish. You can bottom without stopping, but you can't stand going shopping, that's gayish. Oh, gayish, you're probably gayish. Well, life's just too short for narrow stereotypes, so it's gayish. We're also gayish. It's Gayish with Mike and Kyle.
Hello, everyone in the podcast universe. This is Gayish,
the podcast with much ado about nuttin'.
Oh, boy. Howdy, Carol. you have no idea. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz.
And we're here to bridge the gap between sexuality and actuality. And today,
we're going to talk representation.
Great. We're going to talk about representation, but first, here's the news.
Shut your mouth hole. It's time for your ear holes. News.
Okay, so news. The first. Joe Biden, he's our president. Did you know that? There is a U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and President Biden has nominated Sharon Kleinbaum to serve on that committee. And she is a out lesbian rabbi. Talk about a combo of things. She is the chief rabbi of Congregation I'm going to fuck this up, everybody. I'm real sorry.
Here we go.
Kleinbaum is the chief rabbi of Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, CBST, which is an LGBT plus synagogue in New York. And Cynthia Nixon goes there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So she's rabbi-ish. She's of the
Jewish, Kyle. The word you're looking for is Jewish.
She's of the rabbi people. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, the organization that she's now a commissioner of is supposed to evaluate the state of religious freedom around the world and report back to the president and Congress on how that's going. Which I'm going to guess well, as far as like.
It's a paper with one word.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty good.
But yeah, so there are now 3 conservative appointees and 5 liberal appointees, and I kind of want to be a fly on that wall, right? Like the whitest Christian Karen talking to this lesbian rabbi has got to be the best.
What's the point? Is the point so he can come back and be like, chill, we did a study and religion is fine? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I do think that things that come out of this committee in conservative times are like religious freedom is under attack. We're being forced to suck dick when we don't want to, or whatever.
Yep. Lil Nas X made me suck dick.
His demon shoes are turning my son into a sodomite. Yep. But the balance of power is shifting, and I think this is just maybe an attempt to make a significant course correction in a way that isn't shitty to queer people.
Interesting. All right.
Okay, enough about that horse shit. You ready?
Yeah.
News the second. Hold, please. I'm doing this from my phone, everybody. Parting the kimono. News the second. This is just fucking awful. Speaking of religious freedom around the world. So the country of Ghana, in which most gay shit is already illegal, there is draft legislation that was leaked to the internet that is like horrific. Like assuming that this was to actually become law. This was back towards the end of July, so it's a little bit stale. But
July was literally yesterday.
That's true.
So you're good.
It has been described as, quote, the most homophobic document the world has ever seen.
Wow.
Although same-sex sexual relations are already illegal in Ghana and punishable with up to 3 years in prison, this new bill will criminalize everything from sex toys to trans medical care to simply being an ally. Of course, like all good bills that are full of fucking horse shit, it's got an awesome sounding name. It's known as the Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian. How do you say, the person from Ghana, Family Values Bill 2021. It's always about family values, Kyle.
Yep. Sex toys. Huh.
Yeah. So Samuel Narty George, who said that he and 7 other members of parliament would be bringing this legislation forward to criminalize the promotion of LGBT rights back in March of this year, But until this week, when this draft was leaked, it wasn't known exactly how far they were looking to go with all of this. It specifically criminalizes anyone who holds out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, queer, pansexual, and ally, non-binary, or any other sexual or gender identity that is contrary to the binary categories of male and female.
Sure.
Anyone found guilty of being LGBT plus or an ally would face 3 to 5 year prison sentence for what is a second-degree felony. It also criminalized providing or undergoing any and all gender-affirming medical care with the same sentence. And the bill also adds a bunch of, quote, grossly indecent acts punishable with 6 months to a year in prison as, quote, public show of amorous relations between people of the same sex or among persons where one or more of the persons have undergone gender or sex reassignment. It includes any show of affection in public, including 2 boys or girls holding hands, hands around one neck, a kiss on the cheek. So don't even fucking touch each other. And the wording of that is weird too. Like if anybody has had any sex assignment surgery, gender confirmation surgery, if any of that has happened, whatever you're doing is illegal. Doesn't matter if you're straight or gay or the genders involved. Just like if anything has happened, it's illegal.
You could like girls holding hands.
Yeah,
girls hold hands.
Yeah, well, not in Ghana anymore.
No, I guess not anymore. That's insane.
Additionally, sex toys would become illegal, as would anal and oral sex for all people, not just queer people.
Oral sex is illegal?
In
Straight
Ghana.
people should be up in arms about this. I mean, you shouldn't need it to be about you to care, but like, no oral sex?
Yeah, I know.
Wives everywhere have just been given permission not to blow their husbands.
A lot of TMG patients all breathed a sigh of relief. It also bans LGBT plus propaganda, which includes mentioning LGBT plus issues in any form of media, social media included, newspapers or in film, promoting sympathy for LGBT plus people in any way, providing assistance, services, or funding to LGBT plus people or groups, or teaching children about the existence of queer people. It's not dissimilar actually from the really awful oppressive legislation in Russia. You can label anything as pro-queer propaganda, and now it's super ass illegal.
Yeah. Jesus.
I'm really sorry, Ghana. I'm especially sorry because of this goddamn cough that won't go away. But I also, it's fairly well documented that a lot of what's happening in Africa and African politics when it comes to LGBT plus people is directly the result of missionaries from the United States, evangelical Christian white fuckfaces going and spreading lies in order to clamp down. And it's working, and it makes me sad. And so my heart, I won't speak for your heart. You don't maybe have one. I don't know.
Toss my heart in there.
Okay. Great. Goes out to our queer brothers and sisters in Ghana. And hopefully this legislation doesn't come to bear. Unfortunately, I think it's going to.
Yeah.
And we're really sorry.
Yeah, that sucks. Ugh.
News the last?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ending on a happy one.
Yay.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
Who's fucking amazing. Has a trans daughter named Ruby and has revealed that Ruby is an out and proud trans woman and that she is getting married and that Jamie Lee Curtis is going to officiate the wedding.
And if you check under your seats, there's yogurt for everyone.
Activia for everybody. Do you think we get an Activia sponsorship? I'm happy to poop on record and just...
All my poops have been on record. That's something you need to know about me. Yep.
I didn't know Jamie Lee Curtis had kids, and I was talking to a fraternity brother about it just yesterday, and I didn't really know she's married to Christopher Guest, famed fake, goddamn Mike, use your goddamn mouth. Mockumentarian Christopher Guest is her husband, which I think is pretty fucking fantastic.
He's someone whose name I know for sure, but I could not tell you anything about what he looks like. Is he like generic white dude with white hair?
I mean, pretty generic white dude. Okay. Yeah. He's quite often in his movies as well. He will play, a character, not always, but often will. And he, those mockumentary movies, A Mighty Wind and Waiting for Guffman and
Nope.
And
Best in Show.
Best in
Best
Show.
in Show. That's the only one I know.
Great. All right.
I thought he might know the dog one.
But yeah, I think it's really great. Jamie Lee Curtis has just such giant dick energy. I've always really loved her, and she also quite famously, because of that, I think in the 90s had all these rumors about her being a hermaphrodite. Do you remember all of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think maybe by virtue of being bullied, I don't know, but she's an ally and is doing great stuff, and I really love her.
It's so nice seeing positive stories that's like, it's just, hey, everyone, got permission from my daughter to tell you that she's trans, and that's awesome, and I'm going to officiate. Like, it's just, there's only good things about that story, and like, yeah, those are kinds of new stories we need.
Now if we could just get them to do the wedding in Ghana, maybe.
Jamie Lee Curtis might, well, no. I don't think even she can't save Ghana.
Right. Yeah. That's the news, Kyle.
That's the news. Speaking of words that we'll say to each other
that come out of our mouths. Sure.
Here are words that make people's names. I want to thank the following Patreon members for don't laugh at me. I want to thank the following Patreon members for supporting us. Thank you to Terrence Sterling, I think. Okay, yes, my paper's fuzzy. Carlos. Just Carlos.
All right.
I love those one name folks. Just like 7 Carloses were like, yeah, that's me. Todd Harwell, Damian Stevenson, and Z Griffler.
Okay.
Z.
Great.
Thank you so much for your support. It does wonders to our quality podcasting life.
Yeah, and I know you like the Carloses of the world, but we will take your money no matter how many names you have.
And as many names as you need. If you want to support us, go to patreon.com/Gayish podcast.
Yeah.
Representation.
Yeah, let's talk about representation. So I am currently in Denver. I've been here all week for the Sigma Phi Epsilon Grand Chapter Conclave, which happens every other summer. And Sigma Phi Epsilon is a social fraternity. It's your typical college frat, like whatever you have in your mind. It's probably not that egregious, but that is indeed the type of organization we're talking about.
Definitely that homoerotic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because there's actually like legislation that happens here. Like I had to sit in committee meetings with undergraduates and talk about, hey, what should fraternity policy be? And gender was very much in the air at this event. It came up multiple times. The fraternity has since 1999 allowed members, brothers, regardless of sexual orientation. So we were formally allowing gay members of the fraternity. And then in 2014, not by legislation, but our national board came up with this policy that allowed for trans members of the fraternity as long as they identify as male. A lot of what's wrapped in that is that in order to maintain our status under Title IX as a single-gendered organization, we can't let in other parts of the gender spectrum into the organization for legal reasons. And we're working on that and figuring out, what it means. But we do allow trans brothers. And it was interesting to me, representation. Here's where we're getting to representation. The fraternity is very cis, white, straight guy. It just is. But that's not all it is. And I am always amazed and in awe of and happy about other kinds of fraternity brothers when it happens. And there was a trans brother that spoke on the floor of the convention in favor of some legislation that we were running, and it was just such a powerful moment for representation. Like in that moment, all 400 people in that room saw a trans brother who was there and was a human and was speaking about these issues, and it was no longer theoretical. It was no longer this idea that we were wrestling with, or an existential crisis born of nothing. This was an actual person that was there participating with us, that was showing themselves, and it was very powerful. It was very, very meaningful to me. And it made me realize how much representation matters even inside of organizations, right? Like, because we often talk about representation in terms of media, right? Like, who do we see on TV?
Yeah.
Who do we see in movies? But it can matter in other ways too. Just seeing people in real life on organizations that you are a part of, et cetera.
Yeah. It seems like media is like, if it's the kind of fallback, if you are not in a place where you can meet a diverse set of people, then media is like good, but like knowing someone in person, knowing an actual human being is always gonna be the best.
Yep. Yeah. The second story that I have for my conference here, there is a sort of underground group of gay fraternity brothers called the Chicago Society, so named because it was our conference in Chicago in 1999, where we were finally allowed to be in the fraternity, formally. And there are all of these ribbons now. So you wear credentials around your neck, has your name and your title and where you're from, and then stuff about you that are these colorful ribbons. I'll show you mine in a little bit. And one of them, there was one this year that says Chicago Society on it, and it has existed before, but sort of underground. But lots of people wore them this year. It was like we reached critical mass, and so walking down the halls, I could see representation just by people wearing this little lavender ribbon that said Chicago Society on it. And it was great because there were multiple brothers that I have known over the years that I didn't know were gay. I didn't know they were queer, but now I did because here's this ribbon. And it was interesting because it's also flagging, right? Like, unless an undergraduate stopped you and said, "Hey, what's Chicago Society?" A couple of them did, and then I would explain it. You wouldn't know. It's just kind of flying under the radar.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's like, oh God, I'm so done with like coming out and just to have something that can just be like, yo, I'm gay and I don't have to say anything. It's just like, I'm going to pin Gayest to my shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing, and then we can move on from my fraternity. We always elect national officers at this conference, and we elected a new grand chapter president. So the figurehead of the entire fraternity. And he is Billy Madelon, a friend of mine, and he's gay. And in his acceptance speech, in the big speech that he gave at dinner last night, he said, "I want to thank my family, my kids, my husband, Brooks." And that's the first time that's ever been said on stage at my fraternity. So I think a lot of people found out that he was gay when he said that, even though a lot of us already knew. He's not closeted by any means. It's just not, there's no reason for it to come up pretty often. Like, he's not supposed to start every meeting with, "Hey, I'm Billy Madelon and I'm gay." But anyway, I just started crying. I know that's weird. It was a really, really, really big deal. We have had grand chapter presidents before who were gay, but were not out. For instance, my friend Gary Keefe is Barry Manilow's husband. He was grand chapter president, but that was before he and Barry were on the cover of People magazine. He had left that office. So this is the first time that we've elected an out grand chapter president and had him acknowledge his same-sex partner in a speech before the entire body, which that's like 1,200 people.
It's interesting that, like, when we talk representation, I'm mostly thinking like people that have never seen a trans person before, or trans kids that get to see something. But like, you're talking about like, you've been out for 53 years now, and still that moment, like, I don't know. Obviously, no one's like perfect with being gay, and there's a lot to go through. But like, you're like pretty out and cool and comfortable with it. Like, I think of the closeted kids or young kids, or like, it's interesting how meaningful it can still be in spite of how out we are and how much we've already worked through it and seen representation in other places.
Yeah, and it reminds me that I have a duty as a volunteer to be as out as possible without being obnoxious about it. But I need to be as out as I can, because representation mattered to me on that stage last night, and whatever small way I can be that representation for other people as I'm working with undergraduates and alumni in my chapters, I want to do that. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's been quite a week. I'm exhausted. That's why I sound gross with that and the cough. But it's been a lot of fun.
No, you've got your sexy mic voice going.
Yeah, right.
So we are going to. I think you and I. It was not this way when we started, but you and I think a lot about representation when we're doing new projects or when we're like now when we come up with episode ideas and all that stuff. And so we are going to talk to the showrunner and director of the show Rurangi, and it's a trans, like very trans like focus and trans storyline, and people are played by trans characters are played by trans actors, and
every trans character is played by a trans actor.
So I will be very interested to talk to them about just how they think about this. Like they're just such the center of the conversation in the US right now, and I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of questions and things I think about with representation, and I want to be able to show the diversity of the LGBT umbrella, but not do it in a way that's either pandering or like shitty or So
Tokenism.
anyway, I'm excited to talk to Max Currie from Rurangi to learn a little bit more about trans representation
and representation in general. I think because there's a lot of it in the show.
Absolutely.
Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
Break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
So are we back?
We're back.
We're back. We are here with Max Currie. Max, welcome to Gayish.
Thank you very much for having me.
Max is the showrunner and director for Rurangi. Am I saying that right?
No, you're not. It's Rurangi. You kind of roll your eyes, get a bit of that sort of Scottish brogue in there. And I'm co-showrunner. So I'm co-showrunner with Cole Myers, our kind of gender diverse activist writer. Yeah.
All right. Off to a great start. I'm not going to be able to pronounce. I don't know that. Rurangi.
Oh, this is like our native language, Māori. So we're gonna give it one more shot, Kyle.
Wait, say it again.
Rurangi.
Rurangi.
Oh, beautiful.
It's way better.
Yeah. Great. So I think it's very interesting that you worked on this show that focuses on trans people and has one of the big things about it is all the trans representation, the fact that trans characters are played by trans actors. Also, you are yourself not trans, so it's interesting to me. Like, what's that dynamic like? I would often, I think, feel very uncomfortable. Like, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? How am I like? I don't know. What was it like working?
It was a huge learning curve. I'm a cis gay man, and certainly going into this 3-year process, I thought I had my shit together in terms of understanding what the T part of LGBTQI plus was all about, and I learned really quickly that I had a whole lot of misconceptions and preconceptions, and I really needed to go back to school. Thankfully, I had Cole there to kind of not just hold my hand through this, but allow me very generously to walk in his shoes and see through his eyes. And it was a real big challenge for our process. What
were some of the big things you learned over those 3 years?
Oh man, I learned about transphobia and how insidious it is, and I learned about the crucial importance of pronouns, and what a massive difference this thing that's relatively small, a small adjustment in the behavior of cis people, and what a huge impact it can have on someone's sense of self. I learned about the prejudices and biases kind of built into our screen industry. I mean, we ran a whole lot of initiatives and programs to try and counteract that in the making of Rurangi. And I think the hardest lessons, right, is I learned about my own transphobia, which, comes from, being inside a transphobic society. And so, that there was hard lessons. Yeah.
That's not something I would have expected to hear from the director of a trans show, a trans movie like this. I'm surprised that how did you then get involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, so I should elaborate on that point, right? Like, because if you boil it down to Wall, the director of this, a trans-centric drama series, openly admitted to being transphobic. But I think that the point is that, if we're cisgendered and we don't really kind of examine how power and prejudice works in our society, that we do just grow up with transphobic ideas and views. So kind of rooting those out within us. And I mean, trans people will also talk about their own internalized transphobia growing up in a transphobic society. So I think part of making this show is being really honest about ourselves and the context that we form our ideas in, because that allows us to kind of break them down and really kind of get to the heart of things. Will
you tell us a little bit about the show? We've
Sure.
talked about some of the themes and trans themes, but yeah, what is it about?
Yeah, and I mean the trans angle is what makes Rurangi so fresh and different. Trans people in front of the camera, behind the camera, with power in all the different departments, but it's about far more than being trans. Rurangi is about a guy who goes home to this isolated rural dairy town that he escaped from 10 years ago, kind of way before he transitioned. And he's going there to reconnect with his roots, with his father, with his friends in the wake of a tragedy in big city Auckland. In a word, Rurangi is about healing. It's about the healing of people, the healing of relationships, and the healing of the land. There's a really strong environmental theme going through it. There's a really strong Te Ao Māori theme going through it, which is Te Ao Māori means, the Māori worldview. And so, having this kind of trans voice at the center of the show, when you speak to trans activists, they're very interested in how power works in the world, because, so often, they're at the rough end of the pineapple when it comes to power. And so that, gave us a way to look at these other things going on in New Zealand and the world and deconstruct them in a very fresh way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask specifically about the representation of Indigenous peoples that Maori isn't, I think, a thing that a lot of people are familiar with, unless they're in New Zealand. Can you speak a bit about that community and what their struggles are and what's happening in New Zealand? Because our listeners in the United States, I doubt, even know what Maori is.
Well, I guess the states have their own Indigenous people, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not too big a leap to understand, like, the biggest problem facing Indigenous people in New Zealand is racism. I mean, how long do we have? Sorry, that's very flippant of me.
No, I get it. We're gonna solve it right here on this show, just so you know. Like, you're not allowed to go until we have a solution. So,
so we'll talk more specifically in terms of, like, the actual, what happened in the show. So there's a character called Anahera, which is one of the friends that go way back with our main guy Kaz, and this is kind of borrowed from an experience that the writer and I have witnessed firsthand, which is Māori people coming late to their language. You don't need to go back too many generations where Māori were, like, beaten for speaking Te Reo Māori, their own language. This idea that it was, beaten out of a generation, and, we nearly lost Te Reo Māori. And so this character in the show, Anahera, decides to learn her language, but she's learning it as an adult. And so there's this phenomenon of, I look Māori. Everyone kind of assumes that I, should be able to speak my own language, which was taken from me, so we show the battle she has with her own shame, or whakama, which is the Māori word for shame, and she overcomes that in a really sort of spectacular way. I guess I don't want to give the story away, but that was sort of one example, of a story within the Rurangi, that's to do with racism and colonization and kind of reclamation of identity and culture.
I mean, it's the second or third episode, I think, and she's in her house and has all of these Post-it notes all over the place with the Maori word for whatever is going on in her home, and then she goes to that council meeting, and the woman speaks to her in Maori, and she has that sort of confused look on her face, and then she says it in English, right? You can see the struggle of that character with her own language, like you said. It's really interesting.
To me, this is just you being a part of the crew seems like so you are kind of in this position of power that other trans or indigenous people are not in. That feels like, was that does that feel like a burden to you to make sure you're using your power in those positions to make sure everyone is getting the right treatment and representation and the right voice? Like you are literally the person in the room that has power. And is not, from any of these groups.
So that's something that we tried to shake up, the production model for the way that we made Rurangi, because the traditional model is super hierarchical and director centric, and one of the things that we did was that we made sure that there was a trans person in sort of every department. And that it was, these were paid internships as well. The interns got paid more than I did on the show, because we knew that this was about a new group entering the industry, and we wanted to make sure that right from the start, they knew they were valued and took that expectation forward into whatever jobs were going to come after this. And we also made sure that we didn't really so much like this word intern, because they were often the people that had the most lived experience. So I guess a lot of it was about trying to break down these power structures, and that's partly as a director through example. That means genuinely listening and making changes. We had a intersectional panel of trans, Māori, Asian, Pacifica people who had full veto power over everything. So they read treatments, they read scripts, they saw their edits, and it wasn't just about ticking a box. It was actually saying, look, this we need this to be changed. And it was also for me having a really strong collaborative relationship with Cole, the voice of the show. Who also is an executive producer, so they had power, and I think it was just going in aware of the way that power tends to concentrate in these parts of the production model, and really trying to break that down.
It's interesting. You say when you give a group veto power, then there's a question of, well, do they feel empowered to use it? I'm wondering, did they veto anything, and what an example might have been of something that was
so what we called our trans panel was run by Cole, who is also trans. He uses they, them, he, him pronouns. So if I change, he's non-binary, so that's why. And so that making sure actually we didn't put cis people in there to kind of monitor and feedback, that was sort of run internally, and that whole process, was trusted. And sort of Cole came back and said, we had the minutes and said, this is what needs to be changed. As an example, there was a lot of care around the dead naming of Kaz. And I think, when you come from a more traditional drama model, you're like, ooh, this is juicy. In a really public place, like our lead character is going to be dead named, and we'll show how kind of devastating and painful that is. And that's the essence of great drama, all this conflict. And so, what came back really strongly was we need to do that really differently. And we need to make sure not only that that Kaz's character is not dead named anywhere in the show, but that, for example, because we use a close up on the town mayor's lips in this sort of slightly distorted way to show that's happening. We made sure that because for people that read lips, we made sure that she mouthed gibberish so that there's not at any point Kaz's dead name just never it doesn't exist. Like we don't even know it ourselves. It doesn't exist anywhere. And so that was like one example of how the show really reflects, this trans gaze. Was we were not even going to do the thing behind the scenes that is so painful for trans people. So that's kind of an example that of involving the trans panel, I guess, and how it changed the way we did things. There was a lot of care around how we introduced this idea of the anti-trans graffiti into the world of the show without ever showing it. And that was, so, in a lot of ways, some of the feedback from our trans panel was about the way in which we could kind of creatively pull our punches because, trans people get it. They don't need to see this shit. And we can still tell a story without hurting people.
Yeah, that's the first sequence of the first episode, right?
Yeah.
It was really interesting on the website. Like it's partially the trailer and the cast and crew, and then it's partially like a blueprint for how to do the representation in a fair way. Like everything you're saying, I have never heard of, a panel that can have full veto power, and then you say it and it's like, oh, that absolutely makes sense. Like,
and I mean, television tends to hate that kind of shit because it takes time, it takes money, and it takes power away from the people who are used to having it. And that's, I guess, the two big reflections for me is that sharing power sucks. You don't want to do it. Like that's actually the most important power to share. If you're like, oh, look, I've got this person at my table, or I'm letting this person write a scene, and you feel good about it and it happens easily, it doesn't matter. Like that's not the power that you need to share. The power that you need to share is the shit that you want to hold on to. And we tried to be really transparent about our failings as well. I mean, there's a lot to read on the website, but we knew that we were sort of doing things very differently, and we didn't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. So we've documented and put up our process. We actually also did an internal presentation to Netflix, all their HODs from around the world, about kind of how we built the show, because of the way we were trying to break down these traditional structures and work differently.
What response did you get from Netflix when you presented?
So I mean, I've got no benchmark, but I heard that it was a really impressive turnout. So we did like a live panel discussion, and I think 80 of their HODs tuned in live, and then it was recorded and shared out to the wider global Netflix community of creatives. But that was, for us coming from New Zealand, that was a huge audience of kind of heads of department from Netflix. 80 people. I mean, that's enormous in New Zealand numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask about casting, if I could, because in casting Kaz, you've got Els. I don't want to mess up his last name. Els Karad.
Yeah, 100%. Mike, go to the top of the class.
Great. Okay. Awesome. But he is trans, Maori, not an actor. How do you find this person? And then he did such an amazing job.
Yeah, he did. And so great question, because you're probably familiar with when we're talking about diversity and casting, the thing we most commonly hear is, oh, well, we looked and we couldn't find these people. And so the sort of question is always, oh, how hard did you look? I mean, I don't know, folks, whether we were just freakishly lucky in terms of Kaz being out there, but we employed a casting director, and her goal was, it wasn't even negotiable. Like, all the trans characters needed to be played by trans actors. What we did do to sort of give ourselves a fighting chance, I was really nervous signing on to the project, because I was like, shit, if we don't find, this character has to carry the show. They need to be phenomenal. And I was really scared that we weren't going to find them, or we would have to cast someone who just really wasn't up to the job. And it's that thing of, I guess, we are kind of pioneers in a way. Like if there's nothing that's sort of gone before you that's done that, you get really nervous and cagey about it. So I mean, the call out went out there, and it got into Alza's hands. And that was a big deal because he's been passing. And so, committing to this role, also meant coming out very publicly as trans, which, he and his partner had to talk to their kids, and, it needed to be handled carefully. And I have so much admiration for Al's and kind of his commitment to the role. But what we did do was that we didn't define Kaz's ethnicity. We actually left a lot kind of open, because the most important thing was finding a really fucking talented trans actor. And then it was this kind of incredible bonus that really opened up the world of Rurangi, because Al's is also Māori. He's from the Hokianga. His first kind of learnt language was Te Reo Māori. So that affected the casting of that character's family, and so it had a real kind of a flow-on effect that was very true to the character. But I think he's just a natural talent, and because there was so much of that real truth in his performance, I think that's what just allowed him to be awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do you, one thing that we often worry about when we're thinking about, like, we want to make sure we have good representation among all the LGBT community when, even Mike and I are doing an episode or trying to do a new show. At the same time, we don't want to tokenize people and say, like, okay, we need to find a trans person. Now we need to find a lesbian. Now we need to find a, so how do you find that balance in finding the right people and finding them authentically?
I don't know. And I think you're going to fuck it up. But I think it's important to try and know that you won't get it right all the time. Other people won't get it right all the time. Sometimes it will turn out as tokenistic, and sometimes you'll hit it out of the park because you left the door open. I guess the bigger picture thing to keep in mind is for us as a community of LGBTQI plus people, maybe not to be too harsh on one another when it goes wrong, because that is the change in action that we want to see. And I think, we can be our own harshest critics about getting diversity wrong. But the most important thing is that we try. There's no fucking way you're going to get it right all the time. Yeah.
Mike, you say stuff now.
Oh,
but I was also going to say, like, when it also actually means, I mean, especially if you're a white cis gay guy, you need to, like, catch the bullets. You're gonna get knocked around, for doing this, and that's sort of what the work is, right? It's it's been a bit unsafe as the sort of holders of power or the most privileged, and just knowing that you're going to get a couple of knocks on the chin, and I think not being too precious about that. We're trying to undo something that causes a lot of hurt and pain, and that means absorbing a little bit of it ourselves, I think.
Part of the process that I, before this, often think about is also not putting too much of the burden on the people, like an actor, to be like, okay, you have to now teach us all about trans shit, and maybe you don't want to. Like, that's not, like, that's a whole lot of work that someone may have to do that's not part of their job. You almost answered that by you had people there that were paid to do that, to bring their experience, which I loved.
100%, Carl. And actually, there's one helpful tip, right? To reduce tokenism is employ or hire or involve two people from a minority community. And it has a radically different effect, because rather than one person feeling like they have to kind of defend and explain and justify their existence, while the rest of the group outside that community kind of, with the best intentions, questions or interrogates or sort of attacks or tries to understand that point of view. If you have two people from each group, suddenly those cis folk, for example, who aren't part of that group, listen in on a dialogue, a conversation. It creates space for people from minority groups to disagree. It creates space for people to be like, well, my experience is different. And that's so much healthier. It's you learn way more. It's just a much better dialogue. And but often the first mistake we make is thinking, okay, the animal, one representative from each group, we've got them covered. But really, you're putting each representative in that really defensive position from the start, and instead opening up dialogue groups to include, pairings where there's dialogue and conversation. That has a really beneficial impact. Yeah.
That makes so much. I would not have thought about that. That makes so much sense now that you say it.
So we're going to have to go to break here pretty soon, but I did want to very quickly, if I could, ask a question that's not really about even representation. It's just about you. So you were in the pit crew on RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under, and I'm curious to know, that's a context in which basically you're being paid to be hot on TV, right? I'm just curious how that has, if at all, impacted being taken seriously as a director in this very heady space that has, all these important issues. Because I'm just curious if that impacted that experience for you at all.
I mean, I guess I'll find out. I mean, I probably wouldn't know if it had. But this has come up a couple of times about the seriousness of directing and the idea that we should seek to be taken seriously. And I think I guess that speaks to a kind of balance about, I mean, my God, a sense of humor these days is so profoundly useful when you're navigating identity politics. And of all the people in this project, it's probably really important for me not to take myself too seriously. I think that's what allows you to take some of the blows on the chin. Yeah.
It's so annoying when people that are paid to be hot are also smart. Like, that's just really, I just want you to be very dumb, and that would make me feel better. So I guess good for you.
Yeah.
So did we do it, Kyle? We didn't. There's lots more to talk about in this, but
I did. But I really appreciate it. I learned a lot about new ideas for how to think about representation, and honestly, just the acceptance that, like, you're gonna fuck it up, but try. So I love that.
Cool.
But yeah, let's take a break.
All right, let's take a break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
So are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
We are going to do our Gayest and Straightest.
We're going to do our Gayest and Straightest. But first, Max Currie, where can people find out more about you, what you're up to, what you are doing in the world?
Sure. So I'm Max Currie NZ on Instagram. And we've just this week announced that we received development funding for Rurangi season 2.
Oh, wow.
In fact, right now, as I do this interview, our writing team has gathered downstairs. That's where I'm heading to next. So we're right now working on season 2 of the show. And Rurangi, bold new trans drama from New Zealand, is right now available on streaming exclusively on Hulu. Please check it out. There's an amazing hot gay love story at the center of it that your listeners would probably be into.
You should definitely check out Rurangi. Did I do? Okay.
You did
I got
great,
there.
Kyle. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, our website is gayishpodcast.com.
We are on all the social media at Gayish Podcast.
You can send us text messages or leave us voicemails on our hotline. That's 5855-GAYISH. That's 585-542-9474. Standard rates apply.
And our email is gayishpodcast@gmail.com.
And our physical mailing address is Post Office Box 19882, Seattle, Washington, 98109. Kyle, you go first. Gayest or straightest?
Great. Okay. My gayest is, this is a little bit just like a basic one, but I've just gotten back into rosé. You know, like that was my whole shtick at the very beginning. And then I started adding some variety to my life, but I don't need anything else but rosé.
Yeah.
And that's my gayest. I'm back in rosé times. My straightest is finding holes in my shirt and continuing to wear that. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of like under the armpit, so no one's going to see it. That's fine.
The number of your straightesses of the week that involve wardrobe malfunctions is
this is my straightest of life, probably. What about you, Mike?
Well, the gayest thing about me this week is going to the bar Charlie's here in Denver, Colorado. It is like there's go-go boys and there's a shower for the go-go boys and a giant ass dance floor, and it just is super queer. I saw lots of bi people, which I don't know if it's a bi bar, but they sure were out in numbers when I was there. It was just.
How did you see bi people? Like, what did they have? Like, the word bi on their shirts?
Yeah, they did.
Okay, great. Okay, that makes sense actually.
No, I legit saw there was this like sort of pack of people, and there were several of them were clearly hitting on people regardless of gender, just like bouncing from person to person on the dance floor. It was fantastic. So anyway, yeah. The straightest thing about me this week is an embarrassing story that I'm going to tell anyway, but I'm going to try to do it quickly. I doing this fraternity thing, went to dinner and had quite a bit to drink, of course, and then walked home in the rain and just got absolutely soaked through wet, which is important to the story because I realized I had to pee really bad, really bad, like really bad. And we're getting on the elevator and the elevator's backed up. There's only one elevator that's working. And then I turn and I'm going to go to the bathroom in the lobby and the cleaning lady has it closed because she's in there. So I'm like, oh, fuck, what do I do? And so finally got on the elevator. I legit couldn't. I was peeing my pants on the elevator in front of a whole bunch of people, including some of my fraternity brothers. So I reached into my hand, into my pocket, and I pinched the end of my dick to stop it. And it was very painful. It's very painful. I'm getting to the straightest part. The straightest part is whatever I did, I then had urine in my blood and just did nothing about it. I had urine in my blood for like 2 days and I didn't go to the hospital or a doctor or get it checked out or anything. I just soldiered on like a straight guy, you know.
Blood in your urine, Mike, or urine in your blood?
Oh yeah, urine in my blood. No, blood in my urine.
No, blood in your urine. There you go.
Great. Anyway, I
like you less now.
I know I like me less now too.
that was a lot, Max.
Yeah.
What about you?
Sure. So the gayest thing about me this week would have been having sex with a man and afterwards telling him that I loved him. I mean, I think sex with a man, you know, isn't so gay, but I think sex with a man and telling him you love him is definitely gay.
Yeah.
And I think the straightest thing, I had to really scratch my head for the straightest thing I did this week. But it was probably like wearing gumboots and walking around through the mud on a farm and talking to a farmer about the cow shit and what that meant about biodiversity. That felt sort of super manly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Well, Max Currie, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on the success of Rurangi and best wishes for season 2.
Thank you so much, Mike and Kyle. Yeah, it's been a gas being on the show. I appreciate it.
Also, thank you to our super gappers, Jerome York, Forrest Nail, Patrick Martin, Anonymous, Clinton Withers, Explosive Lasagna, Christopher Farrell, Jamie Pugh, Tipsy McStumbles, Thomas B., Dusty Sands, Chris Cacciatorian, and Cian and Javi. Thanks for your money. We like that most of all.
There's too many of them. We're going to have to make it more expensive, Kyle.
Okay.
That's it. This has been Gayish from the Chris Cacciatorian Studios. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz. Until next week, be butch, be fabulous, be you. See you next week.
See you next week.